And we are in Doctrine and Covenants 85, 1 through 2 is what we're going to do today. I decided, because that's what they decided as well. And I think it gives us quite a bit of history here. So it says the Lord wants me to keep a history. Notice what the Lord wanted to be included in the history described in Doctrine and Covenants 85, 1 through 2. Why do you think he wants the saints to keep a history? What could you record about your manner of life, your faith and works that might be a blessing to you and future generations? How might keeping a personal history help you come unto Christ? And then we have the journals, which we'll get to in a second. So let's go to Doctrine and Covenants 85, 1 through 2. And I'm actually going to go to the actual reference here. And we'll go through the first part to understand the revelation. So revelation given through Joseph Smith, the prophet, at Kirtland, Ohio, November 27th, 1832. This section is an extract from a letter of the prophet to William W. Phelps, who was living in Independence, Missouri. It answers questions about those saints who had moved to Zion but who had not followed the commandment to consecrate their properties and thus not receive their inheritances according to the established order of the church. So a bit of a concern there, and we'll talk about the consecration of properties and things tomorrow, I think. But today we're going to read only 2 verses, and we've got some additional reading that we'll jump into as well. It is the duty of the Lord's clerk, whom he has appointed, to keep a history and a general church record of all the things that transpired in Zion, and of all those who consecrate properties and receive inheritances legally from the bishop, and also their manner of life, their faith and works, and also of the apostates who apostatize after receiving their inheritances. So these are the things that they have in there. I've marked them here. Those that have received their inheritances and those that left after receiving their inheritance. They still kept a record of both of those, but more about their manner of life, their faith, and their works. I think it's probably quite important to have that manner of life that they speak of. In fact, one of the things that I've really been interested in is looking at some of the things that people have looked at recently. How do I put it? I will hear things about how people see this or that event in history, and they will judge it really harshly. We're very good at this period of history of judging. Not only we judge people, we judge events, we judge history itself really harshly. I've seen it time and time again, as if any generation, but our generation is hasn't got any clue of what's going on. But what they don't realize is that there's a lot of people who have lived such wonderful, good lives and understood things in ways that we really sometimes miss in our fast society. And as you read their words and you see their things, you start to realize that some of the history that we've made up in our brains, and because everybody's saying it, we think is true, is, sorry about the cars behind me, I decided to do this outside today, is we think that because everybody else is thinking or saying something that it's true. I believe that women's rights have come a long way. We always talk about that. But in most cases, it makes it sound like women were slaves all their life to everything, and that they had no happiness or anything in life. Read the journals. Look what they say. See what they had. And sometimes you'll find some really beautiful things. Read the talks that were given. The church has a lot of wonderful resources of talks and journals of men and women. And if we take only one very small bit and look at it in that small light, it may be easily judged as subpar to what we think life should be. But if we take them all and look at it, some of the people were amazing, and some of these people had such a wonderful life. They knew what joy was. They understood what freedom was, and they understood how their freedoms came and how to work together and not pit each other against each other. It seems nowadays we tend to do that more than we do building each other up. Anyway, that was my little soapbox for that. There's a few things that I wanted to talk about, this keeping a history, and especially as the Lord's clerk. So I was the ward clerk in our ward a few times. So quite a few years I had spent at different times in my life as the ward clerk. One of the things as a ward clerk is that you are responsible with the bishopric to keep a ward history. And I must admit that is probably one of the most difficult things we did. I did, and probably didn't do a very good job. I kept the transactions and the financial side of things and all those things in really good order. But it was hard to remember that there is supposed to be some sort of a history kept. Well, when I was actually on the bishopric, right after I was a ward clerk, I became a counselor in the bishopric, and then COVID hit, and we were one of those bishops in the having to deal with all the difficult decisions of COVID and getting through that. One of the things that was emphasized and brought forward was making sure that our histories were done. So we hurried, and with the help of the word clerk, we got someone called as word historian that worked with the word clerk to put together all the stories and things and histories that we could of the ward. Now, it wasn't like every single person that was in the ward and their histories. Those are personal things. But how was the ward during this time? So the way we did this is we had the bishop and his counselors all write some things, and a few other Relief Society and Elders Quorum presidents, young men's, well, Bishop was young men's, so sorry about that. The young women's presidency, all of those would write something about what was going on, who was doing what, and how was it during this time. And all these were handed in. I remember handing mine in and then reading some of those histories. It was amazing how different each of us looked at the same point in history, and how one person was concerned about one thing while another person was concerned about something totally different, and how each one of those layered on each other, told us a larger story, and gave depth to what we understood as part of COVID. And so I just wanted to point that out. And so our manner of life, our faith, our works, all that was put in those. And I think we should do that ourselves. I don't do a very good journal. I've done journals. I did them all during my mission. I've got those. I've got other journals. But to keep them as a collection has been really hard for me. And so I've done other things. I have now done a few written things for my family in a way that I can remember my history and my things, and these are part of it. These videos, I felt prompted we should that I should do these, and I felt that it was something that I could give to my children. The difficult part with this is the way the internet works, and what we've seen. I don't know if it'll always last, but it has so far. I did some videos back in 2015, and realized that they're still there for now. And it meant something to me to know that there was something there that was still able to be reached, and I wanted something for my children. Whether this sticks around, this isn't the only thing that I record my stories and things on, but it's one of them, and it's one that I can do my way. Now, Wilford Woodruff was known for keeping his journals, because he kept one for every day from 1835 onwards. It says in 1835, Wilford Woodruff began his first journal, believing it to be beneficial to review our past lives and not only our privilege but duty to keep an accurate account of our proceedings. He wrote, "It is to this intent I shall endeavor henceforth to keep a journal of my travels when required. I may give an account of my stewardship." He kept a journal for the next 63 years, making his final entry on August 31st, 1898, 2 days before he died. His journal entries leave a true and faithful record of his personal life, showing his love for his family, his interest in his surroundings, his diligence in performing daily tasks, his faith during trials, and his testimony and understanding of the gospel. The entries also provide glimpses into the lives of other members of the church at the time. In addition to writing about his personal life and his ministry, Wilford Woodruff kept a careful record of church history. He explained, "I have been inspired and moved upon to keep a journal and write the affairs of this church as far as I can. I did not understand why my feelings were exercised in so much in the early age of this church, but I understand it now. I seldom heard Brother Joseph or the 12 preach or teach any principle but what I felt uneasy as a fish out of water until I had written it. Then I felt right. I could write a sermon of Joseph's a week after it was delivered, almost word for word, and after it was written, it was taken from me, or from my mind. It was a gift from God unto me." As part of his effort to chronicle the church history, President Woodruff recorded important details from meetings he attended. In one meeting, he taught a principle that can be applied to journals as well as to official church records. "While walking in a rapid stream, we cannot tread twice the same water, neither can we spend twice the same time of this evening again. Then should we not keep a record of our work, teachings, counsel, which we give in this meeting? We should." Through his journals, Wilford Woodruff gave an enduring gift to his descendants and all members of the church. Biographer Matthias F. Cowley observed, "The life of Wilford Woodruff was full of marvels. It was a simple life in which he revealed his heart and his purposes freely. The frankness of his expressions, his care for details, and his conscientious regard for truth made him perhaps the best chronicler of events in all church history." Elder B.H. Roberts, a member of the First Council of the 70 and noted church historian, wrote, "President Woodruff rendered a most important service to the church. His journals regularly and methodically and neatly kept and strongly bound constitute an original documentary historical treasure which is priceless. The church is indebted to these journals for a reliable record of discourses and sayings of the prophet of the New Dispensation, Joseph Smith, but for him would have been lost forever, and the same is true as to the discourses and sayings of Brigham Young and other leading elders of the church, and for the minutes of important council meetings and decisions. judgments, policies, and many official actions of a private nature, without which the writer of the history may not be able to get right viewpoints on many things. In all these respects, these journals of President Woodruff are invaluable. And I believe that's a picture on this page of his journal. Wilford Woodruff recorded his feelings about marriage to Phoebe Whitmore Carter. And there's a reference to their marriage in the additional information as well. Most statements in this chapter are taken from President Woodruff's records of sermons he delivered in priesthood meetings. Although he often addresses elders in those statements, his teachings are valuable for all members. And I'm just going to cover the highlights of this again to finish off with. When we record our life history, we benefit ourselves, our posterity, and our church. I believe that strongly, and I kind of mentioned a few things already in how things are benefited, how I've been benefited. We should record God's blessings to us and our official acts in the church. I have this here. Should we not have respect enough to God to make a record of those blessings which he pours out upon us, and our official acts which we do in his name upon the face of the earth? I think we should. And coming from someone that kept a journal like that, I think he has an authority to say that. We should make a record of events as they transpire. I think that if I was to write something about the COVID now, after it's happened, my mind would not have all the things that I'd said in there. And I think it would make a big difference in what the history would have looked like. We are not apt to think of the importance of events as they transpire with us, but we feel the importance of them afterwards. There are things that have happened in my life that I think back on quite often, and sometimes they were small events, but when thinking back, they have become large to me. Then this one I thought was, the children should begin early to keep journals. My wife was really good at keeping journals. Unfortunately, a lot of her younger day journals were destroyed. But we have some journals. We have the journals of when we were engaged and information about that. We have the letters that we wrote back and forth as well, and they become treasures to us, something very important to us, and something important to our children. And I think my wife has been more advocating our children to write journals than I have. I try to encourage it, but I think if my wife has done much better at that. And what shall I write, you ask? Oh, dog next door. What shall I write, you ask? Write about anything that is worth preserving, or the best you have. And if you begin this while you are young, it will be quite easy for you when you become men and women. How pleasing it would be to you and your children 30, 50, or 80 years hence to sit down and read what took place around you in your childhood and youth, and what was interesting to you, because one of the things going back on journals, especially my wife's journal, is what her concerns were then. And sometimes we see information differently. So yes, let's keep journals, and I hope you write in your journal today and record something, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.